Americans love their animals. My cats are members of my family, and they're sometimes members of my production team when we're doing this, and that, I think, is that's powerful grassroots for people to discover that their taxpayer dollars are going to some of these just outrageous things, like nonsensical, but also just like heart-wrenching and disgusting. That's powerful stuff, and you've been able to organize around that sort of emotional tug.
Yeah. Well, the truth is, this has always been a nonpartisan issue. Starting in the 80s, the nature of the groups that kind of were waving the flag, like PETA and others, they were obviously more to the left, some significantly more to the left. But if you look at the history of this issue, even in Congress in the United States, Bob Dole was the guy who created the Animal Welfare Act and actually was prompted by concerns about what was happening in this country regarding stolen dogs and cats ending up in laboratories, that they created the first federal bill to govern and regulate the use of animals in experiments. Bob Smith in the 80s, very conservative firebrand from New Hampshire, huge supporter of efforts to end animal experimentation. But so you had some of these key figures in the movement over time coming from the left, from the right. But you have the organizations representing the issues publicly, grassroots-wise, and advocacy-wise, and even policy-wise, on the center and left. So there was a disconnect. There were a lot of people who felt homeless. There were a lot of people who didn't like animal testing, don't want to see dogs tortured, but weren't necessarily aligned with the organizations that were working on those issues, so they felt homeless. And it was totally unnecessary, because at the root of this issue is nonpartisanship. It is an issue about taxpayer spending. It's an issue about animal welfare. It's an issue about public health. There's really the reason everyone should care about this. It's not a left or right issue. But these people had no home. So the brilliance of what Anthony did was say, there is a way we can talk to people on the center right about this issue. It's just reframing this issue from a rats have rights argument to a more of a taxpayer rights argument. Should we be forced to pay for something we don't want or we don't need?
Yeah.
And that just changed the game. And now you have organizations like PETA literally copying us, copying our talking points, talking about taxpayer waste, talking about oversight in foreign laboratories, trying to defund programs instead of taxing them, instead of banning them, instead of doing all the things the movement has done for so long. And the heartbreaking part about all this is that even today, despite the progress we've made over the last 6 years, despite the fact that there's more people than ever, a growing majority of the public opposes animal testing, there's more evidence that ever it doesn't work very well. We can talk about the waste part of it. And there's better technology than ever to replace it. At the same time, there's more money being spent on animal experimentation and more animals in labs than ever before. So there's a disconnect. So when we look at the last 40 years of what the kind of mainstream movement has been doing, we've changed a lot of hearts and minds, but it's been a failure in terms of actually addressing the problem.